just takes a pause at 2, 3. Okay, good evening, sirs, moms, ladies and gentlemen. Apologies for the delay. We were supposed to do this last week. However, I had some terrible bloody news, so I was unable to jump on the vlog. However, here we are again this week with the amazing former Royal Marine, great friend of mine, absolute legend of a man, Steve Forsyth. How you doing, Steve?
Yeah, good, Vince. Good.
God, I'm glad, mate. So the last podcast that we had, sirs, moms, was Detective John Wedger. Now, I'm obviously a massive fan. You know, I had him on the show. I've heard him before. However, there is a difference between police officers and soldiers, obviously. I'm a massive fan, as I've just said, but the subject matter that he has is very daunting, and it was a 2.5 hour, you know, it was only supposed to be an hour, but we've done 2.5 hours. And I feel like after that tough one, I asked Steve to come on because Steve is an absolute genius at easing. Well, you're a genius at easing my mind, Steve, anyway. So if it works for me, I'm sure it works for the other people, you know?
Yeah.
So anyway, Steve, friend of mine, you went to Parliament the other day. Steve, talk to us. Talk to us, my friend.
Yeah, 15th of July, I went to the National Inquiry for the grooming gangs. I wasn't sure if I was going to get in because I didn't have an invitation, but I had Juliet and Paige staying with me over that weekend. And so I decided to go on the day. And they were convinced I wouldn't get in. I actually just sort of decided that I would at least attempt to get in. And I wasn't met with any resistance. I walked in. I wasn't even asked for my ID. I was invited in. I skirted around the security. I didn't have to go through the metal detectors. And then I was invited up to the Jubilee room. And I had no intention of actually speaking or trying to do anything apart from sort of gauge what was going on. And I sat at the back of the room, and as usually happens in these situations, someone approached me, and it happened to be the MP, Rupert Lowe. And you know, it's very civil, asking me why I was there, who I was there on the behalf of, what my involvement was. So I basically said to him, "Do you really want to know?" And he said, "Well, absolutely." So I explained to him that as far as I was concerned, I was there to explain what the people know, not my personal perspective or anything else is. I said, you need to hear this because this is what is being shared. This is what we do know, is that our belligerent government rolled out a gene editing bioweapon, which according to your Terrorism Act 2000, section 114, the rollout of a noxious or toxic substance, including a bioweapon, is an act of terrorism. And I said, and the other situation we've got is the police have willfully and deliberately suppressed information that would have prevented further loss, harm, injury, and suffering. And the amazing thing they're sort of showing to me was every time I engaged with someone in Parliament, Rupert Lowe was the first person, and then I spoke to a barrister, and then I spoke to a doctor, and some other members of his team. As soon as I mentioned the bioweapon, all bar none of them, the first thing they responded to me was, "Well, we haven't had it," which I didn't react to because I knew that would be easy for me to react to. So in response, Rupert Lowe said to me, "So what's next?" And I said to him, for me, it's very simple. I said, the former Major General of the Royal Marines, Ed Davis, is the new black rod for Parliament. And he immediately needs to close this deceptive, fraudulent, treasonous place of business down. And we need the Military Global Alliance, our military, to remove the remaining hazards to us all. And we need the law of war activated, which we're currently under. So we need 11.14 activated, which is food and medical provisions, because we've lost too many. And his response to all of that was, well, I can't disagree. And
They know.
they know. And I spoke to another member of his team, a female, who was talking to two of the incredible women that were there giving their testimonials for the day. And I didn't want to do anything apart from let these people have their day and their voice. But a bit prior to actually going in there, I did hear the mocking attitude of when someone asked Rupert Lowe why that meeting, what was the meeting about? His response was, I think it's about politics. They think it's about politics. So, you know, this is not me casting judgment. It's not me making any assumptions. It's just I'm just literally telling you how that day panned out. So when I spoke to this lady who was talking to these two women that had been involved in these grooming gangs, I said to her, she did ask me if I had anything to say, and I said to her, well, you need to know that we know that your former Prime Minister, Tony Blair, was found guilty in Bow Street Magistrates in 1984-83 for inappropriate sexual misconduct with another male in the public toilets. You need to know that we know there's 185 members of Parliament currently on the sex offenders register. And she appeared quite shocked and asked me how I knew that. I said, it's not just me that knows this. I said, this is being shared everywhere. Millions of people know this. And you need to hear it. And then I spoke to the barrister. And I explained to him, I said to him, are you aware that on the 10th of March, 2025, in the Austin Chronicle in Texas, there was we would call it a gazetting, but basically a public announcement in the Austin Chronicle, which stated that the birth certificate had been classed as securities fraud.
Roger.
And he didn't rebut it. He nodded his head. And I said to him, and what we've done in addition to that, we've now evoked the fruit of the poisonous tree, which the reason it jumped out to me initially was it stated that 99% of barristers and lawyers know nothing about it. He didn't blink an eye. He knew. And I said, and what that clearly states is if there's any deviation in due process from the beginning to the end, everything must be dismissed. So I said to him, on that basis alone, what that states is that now the birth certificate, the way you've created our fraudulent, deceptive, treasonous, legal fiction, everything from the moment we arrive and take our first breath must be dismissed. Everything layered upon us must be dismissed immediately. And and he looked at me and went, well, yeah. And I just went, okay, so that's another. And then I spoke to a doctor, a paediatrician, a lady doctor, really nice lady, from, I think she was from Glasgow in Scotland. And, you know, I had a very similar conversation with her. And I said to her, you know, the thing is, you know, there were 2 million people walking around London in 2021 who knew what was going on with this gene editing bioweapon. And, you know, I know, Vince, paediatricians have been making up to £1 million a year for years in ensuring that these childhood vaccine programs go from start to finish as in commission. And I said to her, I said, the thing is, you've only got to look at the person that set up your medical training and education and our education system, John D. Rockefeller's Masonic Creed. It clearly states we will keep their lives short, we will keep their minds weakened, all the while making them believe we're doing the opposite. And
I seen that the other day.
You know, and she looked shocked, and I said, the thing is, this isn't personal. You know, please don't be offended by this. This is not personal to you, but this is the harsh reality. And this was a gene editing bioweapon. It was designed, it was weaponized against everyone. And the highest military grade psychological warfare was used against everybody to create fear and get everyone to take this. And you know, I've just walked around here talking to all these people that are here to protect us, all telling me they haven't had it. And I said, and this is done. And, you know,
that's mental. And
all this situation at the moment, all this fear narrative with everyone saying they know what's going on. And, you know, how many times have we gone through this narrative in the last 5 years? Young fighting age men in hotels. 2021, the same thing. 2022, there's a certain period where everyone talks about young fighting age men. How else would you ensure you deployed a military global alliance to every single town throughout the British Isles for when the moment comes, when everyone hears and sees the truth, there's boots on the ground, and the remaining hazards to us are removed? You have to think out the box. You have to.
So you were saying that you think these individuals are good guys?
Vince, you know yourself, right? We trained these Afghans, these Iraqis. They worked alongside us as interpreters, as people that stood with us. And, you know, when you're in that environment, and you know yourself, is all wars, when you see it, are all constructed. They're all fake. There's always an ulterior motive. There's a narrative, and they send our men, our young brothers and sisters, to these environments, and they're not remotely interested in mitigating the risk. It's lambs to the slaughters, fat men and women in suits that are sending our young fighting, and they've been doing it forever. And the Second World War didn't end. It just went into the shadows, into the CIA, into the thing. Just one big continual move to get to this point where their last objective was to eradicate us to 500 million, and they failed miserably.
Yeah.
You know, and we're ready right now. And, you know, we've talked about this a lot, is if you were in charge of making the decision of when to end something, you have to be in full control. Everything's in, and then your decision is based purely on stopping further loss, harm, injury, and suffering. Now, we just had a discussion before we came on here. The military are in control in DC. Arrests are happening. Things have been happening, but this has been ongoing forever. You know, 2019, CEOs from corporations were being removed. 2021, 2,500 of the global heads of these corporations were being removed for the gravest crimes in humanity. Executive Order 13818. Executive Order 13848 states fraud vitiates everything. If the birth certificate, the legal fiction they've created in their fraudulent, deceptive, treasonous place of business, it is finished. There is nothing else to do. All these children, by presumption, because the mothers and fathers have been deceived into signing these birth certificates, now have to be returned to their rightful mothers and fathers. That's the only thing. The
Roger.
same day Yvonne Watson was in Tyneside, Newcastle, in the courts, where she set case precedents. I think it's M2EC 5653. That's case law now, saying there's a gap in the jurisdiction between legal fiction and living man and woman cannot be breached. It can't be breached, right? We've done that here now. We were in the family court on the 6th of August, the same day she was in that court and got that. We were talking to the barristers all day in that family court in the City of London. It's the only jurisdiction that we hadn't been to, because we've done every single court, from magistrates to Crown to county to the Royal Court of Justice, as you know. So we now went to the City of London on the same day Yvonne got her case law. So people need to stop now and actually take a deep breath and go, it's finished. It's done. And there is nothing to fear at all. And I go right back to 2021, the third Monday of January 2021. Major General William Walker stood in front of the Ring Fence Corporation of Washington, D.C., and he stated, "We are here to provide the smooth transition of military power." And then weeks later, 9 of the 11 heads of the Pentagon were retired, because this was rolled out by the military industrial complex through their corporations, their civilian corporations. The DGAL paper showed very clearly, that was released in 2020, the population they wanted left in every country on the planet. That's a fact, and that's the
truth.
Where we're at.
Yeah, I got to be honest, mate. I thought it was a lot, but now, while I'm seeing all the boots on the ground in America, mate, and it looks like we're very close to the flick of the switch, the EBS. Because, like you said, mate, it's because people see that we haven't. How do you define winning the war? Like, everybody made a way, like this information finally getting to every man, woman, and child. But there's a whole, Steve, being a military man, there's loads of things that need to happen in order for that to happen. People need to be positioned in certain places to make sure the criminals don't continue, fucking killing and maiming and all the rest of the business. So I think, me included as well, for a long time, because this has been going on for so long, people start to kind of lose hope.
Yeah.
But
what can I say, Vince? I have seen this a lot, because I've sort of got involved with basically every facet of this, and we were helping people who are having their houses unlawfully repossessed. And the last 2 that we did, within half an hour of the locksmith turning up, I was actually giving the guy a hug, because I opened up a conversation. I explained to him, why we were at that place and what people were actually doing and how they were standing strong and firm and saying no. And what transpired is, he told me his own sister had passed away 3 weeks after having her jab, and that made me quite emotional, because a similar thing had happened with a member of my family. And he looked at me in the eyes and he said, "This is not happening, is it?" I said, "No." I said, "This is the moment when you all need to realise that we need to stand together." And, every single corrupt system has been weaponised against us. We've all been enslaved and entrapped. And, there's no other way of looking at it. If you I spoke to my son yesterday, who's 25, who's a computer programmer and coder, and I said, look, you just go onto AI now, and you put in that Masonic creed and ask how you achieve the objective, their final objective, by this space and place we're in right now in 2020. We've lived through every construct, every system that is based on that creed. We will keep their lives short, the medical system. We will keep their minds weakened, the education system, the programming, the entertainment, the television, all of it, every single system. And I'm not saying all the people in these systems, but all the systems were designed to enslave and entrap us. That is the truth. And you can see it so clearly.
Now you can.
And we had to wake up, Vince, and we have to take responsibility that, we were all programmed. We they tell us from the moment we start school, we only use 10% of our brain power, and we only use this, and some people have higher, right? The reality is it was all done by design, and they erased 90% of our memory. And this is the other part of this journey. It's a physical transformation we've been going through. We've had assistance in the raising of our consciousness and everything else. And, religion is another divide and conquer. And the race card. Religion in Latin means relegare, to bind again, to keep in bondage, take the God from within, create a false idol without, and control you with fear. And I speak to my Muslim friends about this. I speak to my Catholic friends and Christian friends, and we are the power and the glory, and we've allowed them to use us as their human resource forever. And you have to get to that point where you go, I'm not playing your game anymore. It's over. It's literally breaking the matrix. And that's what we had to do. And it doesn't matter how many had to do it, how many people are on board or not on board. We had to go forward as the Recce Troop, as the advance party, and clear the way for everyone. And in order to be able to do that, there can't be any ego in it. There can't be anything else, because we're not doing this for ourselves. We're doing this for everyone else. It's about, and look what you've done for your community, the way you motivate. When I stayed with you, it was inspiring.
Thank you.
Just seeing the love and the passion, and this is now the moment that we all have to come together, and we have to do it with love and compassion for one another. And when everyone hears and sees the truth, there's going to be a lot of angry people out there, and rightly so. But they need to know that we navigated this the right way.
I've got a question, Steve. So Sean is saying hi. Hi, Sean. Somebody else said hi. I missed you. Tomo's asking, is there any chance of a civil war in Wales? My friends are shitting bricks.
Asking me?
That's what they're asking us. I'm hosting you. We are subject matter experts, I guess, in war.
Do you know what? There's not going to be that's what they would like.
I believe, right? So I'll start us off. I believe that the cabal wants civil unrest. That's what they want. And there's evidence of that everywhere. But I believe that the people, we are, as Steve have said now, we're raising our consciousness, collective consciousness. I mean, Dr. Stephen Greer talks of consciousness because it's not just being awake. There's so much to it. And I believe, we are so, as Steve have said, we are so smart, we are so powerful, we are so clever. I believe that this is going to be a smooth transition now. Obviously, when people realize the truth, there are going to be a lot of upset parties. And I also believe that that's why these soldiers are now in the streets. Now, it's not, me and Steve were just talking about this before going live. You won't see it on the mainstream media. the revolution will not be televised, as they say. So, you know, I've just gone in to see my old man. He doesn't know that there's troops in the streets. But anybody with access to the internet, you can clearly see there are soldiers cutting around the streets in Mastiff and Huskies with rifles. Like, you know, this is massive. So, and I believe that there, like I just said, there will be a smooth transition because, you know, me and Steve, we've been campaigning, trying to get people to do their jobs. You know, we went to an army camp, but you are taking a spoon to a gunfight. You know, like ultimately, we need to get the soldiers to realize, oh shit, these guys are not our enemy. What these guys, you know, these guys are on our side. And
You got to
ultimately, when
remember,
that
Vince, as well. I
happens,
mean, even in the UK, there were military tribunals going on in the hotels in 2021, and there was a video being circulated in 2021 when some members of the public went to one of these housing places where these young fighting age men were, and a guy came out in his dish dash, spoke very good English, and he showed his Department of Defence ID and said he explained that he was here with the Department of Defence and the British military. And there were military tribunals going on in hotels. I know that from a member of my community that was actually working in emergency services and had visited one of the hotels and was told by security he couldn't really disclose anything, but it was some form of military tribunal. So, and you got to also, when Bournemouth Hospital and 10 other hospitals, including your one in Wales, declared a state of emergency in 2022, our logistics regiment were on 24-hour standby driving the ambulances. They were doing border security and they were doing airport security. So at a particular point, our military have been activated. It wasn't going to be made public until everything was done and cleared up. And there have been, when you look at what we were following in 2020 with the explosions and the earthquakes, the destructions of the underground tunnelling systems, there were earthquakes in Wales, there were earthquakes in Scotland, there were 3 earthquakes in 10 days in RAF Stansbridge. People were citing it. You can go back and look at the historical, you just go on Google and look at earthquakes. They were saying it sounded like a sonic boom. That would have been a weapon system. An earthquake has a P and an S resonance. This only had one signature. You know, it's part of what we were trying to do was also alert our military to the fact that we were in a conflict that they couldn't even see, the young guys in the military. Stop following orders from above. Our first Sea Lord did send out letters to the RAF, to the Marines, to the Army, coercing people to buy a weapon after they came back from leave. So we had to alert our military, and we said to them, look, you know, once they started seeing people getting sick from this and dropping, we said to them, look, you know, the only way we can show you that there's a countermeasure already in place is why would the Bears vaccine factory in Germany be blown up? Why would the vaccine depot on the army base in Italy be blown up? Why would the largest vaccine centre in India being blown up, the one in Cape Town, the one in, you know, so if you're now realising this is a weapon that's been weaponised against you, you must now be able to see that there is a countermeasure in place. And I know you know, I did see, you know, something jumped out at me in 2021. For the first time in 1,000 years, a Royal Marine was given the key to the Tower of London.
Yeah,
right. And there was also another report saying the youngest ever Major General of the Royal Marines committed suicide, which I was like, that's strange. And then there was then the Royal Marines were given guard duty in their white hats, their pith helmets at Buckingham Palace. Now the significance of that is if you're doing a palace duty, you're no longer under the control and command of NATO. So there would have been an element that would have been taken in and activated to operate with the global alliance here And then, is it another coincidence that for the first time in hundreds of years, a Welsh Royal Marine, is now the first Sea Lord of the Navy, and the Black Rod of Parliament is a former Major General of the Royal Marines? So I would say...
Not that my nose. Oh. Sorry, mate, my dogs are having a fucking growl.
Yeah.
But no, you are right, and I hope all the viewers digested that, because you're very well at digesting this information, Steve. But the military, we never give our position away. If we're on an approach to you, we're going to do it. We always have the element of surprise. So, Tomo, just to reiterate, bro, find God first of all, because when you find God, it doesn't matter what happens in this realm. But I honestly believe that the soldiers, I believe that they now, so I wasn't optimistic a while ago, but now I do believe that there are elements of the special ops military that are in control, because like Steve said, something happens and then there's always a counter, but Steve's very familiar with you've got a photographic memory, Steve, haven't you? You just don't forget stuff. Whereas me, I'm a little bit more. I like my bayonet applied before, but there is no, because again, this is not one bayonet application. This is a campaign. We were in Herrick and Telek, bloody decades. It's not. It's.
I think for me, Vince, it is, you have to look at the reality. It's of where we're at, and also the fact that, like I said before, I'm still trying to I'm still getting communication from women that have had their children taken and everything else. So they're still in trauma and they're still in fear. Now, everyone, the way we've conducted ourselves all the way through this is we haven't gone into any of these places, as you know, when we've gone into these fraudulent places of business. And even when we've approached the judge, we said, we're not here to judge you. This is your opportunity for redemption. This is your opportunity to do the right thing. Now, the reality is, where we're at is the birth certificate is, in legal terms, is actually larceny, genocide, and mayhem. In legal terms, they refer to us as a problem child in the 5th edition of the Black Law Dictionary of Mother Alone. There is a fraudulent documentation which has been cited in the Austin Chronicle on the 10th of March 2025. Fact. And then Govinda Tidball from the Health Ministry of Canada, a month later, on the 10th of April, went live and stated it. And the statement that went along with that, this is the biggest announcement since the birth of Jesus Christ.
Birth of Christ, that's right? Yeah.
So, consciousness. This is a wake-up call. You demand your sons and daughters to be returned right now. You stop referring to these places as anything but fraudulent, deceptive, treasonous places of business. They have zero authority. Their presumed authority went out with the UCC 1-308 filing, which gave them 40 days and 40 nights to rebut the 12 presumptions of law and affidavits to be true. They were unable to do it. So sovereign status was handed back to us. I read that out to the court on the 1st of March 2023. It's taken nearly 2 years to get through to people that every single corporation in the UK is registered on Dun & Bradstreet in the United States. They are all have to comply with the Uniform Commercial Code. That's the truth. And that's why they know they're finished. And we're being told they're finished. So all we need to do is come together and stand together. Who wants to remain a slave? Who wants to keep paying the line? I don't want to be their human resource. I didn't come here to play the game. I came here to change it. That's what I know. And that's why I've kept going and going and going, like yourself and like many other people. but I can't listen to the lies anymore. There is only the truth.
We've got a Carol here saying they stole my house, evicted. First of all, Carol, I'll say I'm awful sorry, darling. So I was just telling Steve. So many of you guys know that I've been fighting my mortgage with a promissory note. Now, the nature of securities is that it's held privately. Okay, so it's very important that I don't give any information about any of the securities on social media or any place, okay? Because again, they're private and confidential. However, what I will say, Carol, is we have now got a bloody lawyer to track the promissory note that the banks, you know, Steve came to my first court case with the mortgage and they said, well, all that, what shit were they giving Steve? That I was skint and I was unable to pay, blah, blah, blah. And they wouldn't even allow me to mention the promissory note. This is how corrupted and broken the system is. They would prefer you, unfortunately, out on the bloody streets. I don't really know what to say. I mean, I know Steve has been involved with the repossessioning. I know these guys have been going back and challenging some of the properties that have been taken, but it's a very sad time. She's wrote and evicted me. No mortgage. I've wrote and complained to the solicitors, complaints department, court in the case you referred to, no response. Yeah, no concerns for my health. So are you referring to, Carol, the UCC 1308 that Steve submitted on the 21st of the 12th, 2023? Again, when me and Steve was in court, you know, Steve was my Mackenzie friend, so he'd submitted this in Bournemouth Crown Court. He was stood next to me. The judge was, you know, he stood next to me, but he wouldn't allow Steve to address him. You know, Steve had to talk to me, and I had to talk to the guy. They're like fucking evil little children. And then the judge, we shouldn't be calling them judges, you know, the individual working in the deceptive, treasonous place of business, as Steve has quoted, he confirmed that Steve had the thing, and he seen Casey William Mosley, and he said, yeah, but this is a civil court, and that happened in a criminal court. Now, for those of you unaware, fraud is fraud in any court. And as Steve has already said, fraud vitiates everything. So these guys are really just showing they're complicit until the final hours.
Yeah.
Have you got anything to add to Carol, Steve?
No, I mean, obviously only sympathy, but just know that everything is going to be righted. You know, justice is going to be served, and this was never going to go any other way. Every single system is finished, and they were all going to show their complicity right until the end. They weren't going to change. But one thing I will say is the good people within the systems have helped in being clear up the systems. And if you remember, Vince, when we were in the court, what the judge very cleverly did that not many people saw was when he actually said, we can't take this into account because this is a civil court. When I interjected and said, that's fine, however, fraud by deception is a crime, he then asked me not to speak again. But what he did then is he then put the onus on the person representing the bank and said, bearing in mind, with everything you've heard in here today, do you have any further things to say? And he said no. The judge got immediately up and left the court. So he gave him the opportunity to do the right thing. He didn't do it. So they've proven. You know, we've had the same thing with the promissory note cashed with Rosie, another guy. when we were taking back the house, which we did successfully, I stayed in that house that we took back for nearly 60 days. An off-duty police officer actually turned up and said, "Should you guys be doing this?" And I had a long, lengthy conversation with him, and he looked at me and he said, he goes, "To be honest with you," he said, "everything is fraud, isn't it?" And I said, "Exactly." And he did make a point of saying to me, "Please understand, if there were any police to turn up here, it won't be from me." So there are a lot more good people who have been trapped in these
In the bad
systems,
system.
but you have to use your discernment as well. You know, I go right back to the 18th of the 1st, 2022, when we closed the Kings Park Community Hospital down. And, you know, I had to stand in front of an inspector, having just explained to him that there were already 2,000 deaths and 1.3 million adverse reactions to the gene editing bioweapon, and explained to him that my own member of my family had passed 3 weeks after having theirs. And his response to me then was, "What do you want me to do? I have a mortgage to pay and children to feed." Now, I'll be honest with you, Vince, I do get that, because I know how hard this journey's been for so many people. We were willing to sacrifice everything, absolutely everything, to do this. And this wasn't for everyone. And I'm not judging anyone for the decisions that they've made, but there has to come that point where there has to be accountability. And it doesn't matter whether you're in social services, whether you're in the police, whether you're a doctor. At some point you need to wake up, and you actually need to take ownership for the fact that you've been duped like everyone else has done, and your morals and ethics need to kick in. Forget about your professionalism. This is a moral and ethical duty that you had, and your duty was to do no harm. The police's duty was to protect us, and they have all failed. So those systems are finished, and they need to be, whatever we put forward going in place, it needs to start from the bottom. It needs to start with families, it needs to start with communities, and we do not need any central governance at all. We're capable of managing and running our own lives.
Yeah, I gotta be honest. See, I agree with having a police force, bro. You know, I agree with having. I don't know about an army. You know, like I've always wanted to be a soldier, but when you actually sit back and think about it, you know, if you have soldiers, you have armies. You know, if you have armies, you're ready to go to war. So it's a very difficult subject matter. But what I do believe in is, because there are always going to be bullies. So I believe in having a police force because, you know, my mother, for example, she was a fragile old lady. Now, when I'm back away in theatres and stuff, I want her to be safe in her community, obviously, you know. So
Do you know the thing is? Do you know the thing is, Vince? It's even using the word force. They used to be a service, right? They were a service to the community. You know, even when we were kids, you know, there'd be the Bobby on the beat. Actually, if the kids were misbehaving, they give him a scold, or they go around and put him in front of his dad. You know,
yeah,
and the thing is, we have to take responsibility for our own communities. We do not need any more force or forces weaponized against us. And you know, that is what happened. And they're not police officers, they're policy officers pushing an agenda for a government that have just rolled out a terrorist attack. That's the truth. And and you know, the thing is, so much of it is window shopping. They've been stealing 112,000 children a year from under our noses, 8 million children around the world. And this is the massive issue that a lot of people are going to struggle with and to get their heads around. And the thing is, Vince, I've seen it even on a small scale with going with these women and families to these places of business, and seeing the disdain they have for us. And it is disdain. And there are certain people that within those that are involved in nefarious business of trafficking, and paedophilia and everything else. Otherwise, like I said to the person in Parliament, 185 MPs on the sex offenders register. Thames Valley Police have just released 39 police officers have been removed for sex offences. Hundreds of them are off for mental health issues. The Chief Constable of Dorset we served on the 11th of the 1st, 2022, gross misconduct in public office. The Chief Constable, he was the lead for training and policy in the UK. The West Yorkshire Chief Constable. People need to just see what we're seeing. They're finished, Vince. And this needs to happen, because every day this continues, we're losing someone else that we don't need to lose. And we've been helping people who've been injured by this bioweapon for the last 2 years, and having young mums and dads come to us who are needing help, who've got young children. For me, that's a point of no return.
I'd like to say, guys, so, Carol is clearly one of these individuals that are, because even though it looks like the good guys are winning, and as Steve, we've given us a lot of dates and a lot of things that happened over the years, so it looks like we're headed in the right direction. However, that's not stopping the collateral damage at the bottom of the pyramid, i.e. me and you. Now, I don't know whether you're aware of this, Steve. You like this. I had a letter reference this house and our court case. So I'm guessing they do like a IT recce, because what they've said is the bailiffs have suggested to come and take my house, but they've seen the way that I conduct myself on social media, and they're unwilling to come to my property, Steve. Now, I'm one man, and like the civilian population or the general public that are viewing this now won't understand the severity of that. Now, for me and Steve, because he's a Royal Marine and I'm a Royal Welsh, he's a Royal Marine and I'm a Royal Welsh Fusilier, we understand it doesn't matter how many enemy forces are in the next village. If our mission is to clear that village, we're going through the village. So for these guys, if these guys were lawful, they'd be arresting me, wouldn't they? I'm one man. But the fact is, they are bullies, and they will check on social media. So unfortunately, Carol, you've already been evicted. Now, I would suggest you go into these rapid response groups and ask for people's help in your area, because there are lots of people in lots of different areas, and they are helping people like yourself. And they're going back and they're saying to the bailiffs, look, sir, XYZ. And when you're explaining to them like this, and a lot of them are, there's no, initially, a couple of years ago, there was a lot of wrestling at these evictions. Now, the police and the bailiffs, they're standing down.
Yeah.
Because what they explained, go on, Steve.
I was just going to say, just go back and take back your house. It's yours. Go back and take it.
She's written, yes, I think it was that one. She's referencing the case reference. I told the solicitor before they stole my house about the straw man account. That was not me, all in capital letters. Well, unfortunately, that individual, you made them aware and they acted on it, which makes them complicit. Everyone's complicit until the final hours. I'm sorry that happened to you, Carol.
Just go back into the house, Carol. Get the locks. Go take back your house. That's your house. Just go back and take it back.
And get on the rapid response groups and ask for, because I think prevention is better than cure, especially in these times. You'll be familiar with Simon. That's he's come to the army camp. He came down and done bits with you, didn't he?
Yeah.
They threatened to take his vehicle. They turned up at his property, right? He wanted me to speak to them on his behalf, so I rang the guys up. They said, data protection, and put the phone down, okay? So he drove all the way to me just so I could speak to this prick on his phone. And then I made him aware about the UCC 1308, and he put the phone down on me. So I text his full name, and I text Steve's case, 21st of the 12th, 2023, KC William Mousley, UCC 1 submitted, not rebutted. They left the car on his drive. They came to pick the car up. When they were made aware, I've been trying to get Si on the vlog so we can confirm authenticity of what I'm saying, because it's nice for people to hear this from people that are not ex-squaddies and ex-bootnecks, because Si, he's just an ordinary guy that understands that his rights are being violated. And, a lot of the general public now have had a bloody titball. But unfortunately, these criminals will continue to violate our rights until we put our foots down. I've got 2 cases now next month. I believe the one on the 15th of September have been pushed back because I've submitted the affidavit of John from the Common Law Court. Steve is aware. He's helping us with various things. And, it's not being rebutted in the UK. He sent it to Keir Starmer. He sent it to all the courts up and down England. So, when these judges are getting hold of this information, because some of them are smart and some of them realise, if I allow that to happen, if I allow his rights to be violated after he submitted this, I'm then complicit. So a lot of them are saying, we'll adjourn this till next month and I won't be fucking you. Because they want to try and get rid. But unfortunately, Carol, get on the rapid response group. Try and get some people in your local area and just go and talk to these guys and just take it bloody back. Because again, as per the updated UCC 1308, security fraud. The affidavits, as Steve has said, they were not rebutted, which means it's fact in law. And anybody that ignores the law, ignorance of the law is no defence. They're complicit. Go on, Steve.
No, I was just going to say, Vin, it's got to a stage where all the way through this process there's something else added to it that makes it even simpler. And the fact that Yvonne Watson's now created case law with proving there's the gap in jurisdiction cannot be closed between the legal fiction and the living person. Whoever they're referring to or addressing anything to is not you. It's your legal fiction, and it's been proven to be fraud. So they're finished. You don't even have to overcomplicate it anymore. You refer to that case law. I think it's M2EC 5653, and you all go on Mel Clark's podcast at the Ever Settle and just confirm that. That's just from memory. But there is nothing else to do. They are absolutely bang to rights. And as I said right at the beginning, you put the fruit of the poisonous tree doctrine on top of that. It basically clearly states everything from the beginning to the end. If there's any deviation in due process, everything against us must be dismissed. So everything layered upon us as a living man or woman from the moment we arrive and take our first breath must be dismissed. It's all fraud. It was an enslavement and entrapment created through their legal fiction. If you can get your heads around that, there is nothing else to do whatsoever. And now the military and space, everybody needs to hear and see the truth, because we have to stop further loss, harm, injury and suffering. Enough's enough.
Yeah.
That's where I'm at.
Me too, mate. Me too.
Yeah.
I've got 2 court cases. One is council tax, and one is the mountain next month.
You haven't got anything. You've got a lie that's been put on you by a fraudulent, deceptive, treasonous place of business.
I stand corrected, yes, and I've actually emailed these both parties and said exactly that. Thank you for your invitation to your treasonous, fraudulent place of business. As you said, they're all registered on Dun and Bradstreet.
Send them Yvonne Watson's case law, 6th of August, Tyneside Court, I think it was in Gateshead, District Court, District Judge, Heather Searle. Send them that and just say to them, no joinder, no contract, no offer to contract, you're finished, go. Because you are now complicit in Executive Order 13848, fraud vitiates everything, and Executive Order 13818, crimes against humanity. And you've all acted as agents for our political and government that have rolled out a genocide, democide attack on us all. That, honestly, Vince, that's 100% where I'm at with all of this.
Well, that's exactly what I'm going with, and I hope many people, many of the viewers, you come and support me and my community next month, because enough's enough, guys. We need to show up. We need to start supporting each other. It's a very crazy time. So that's just under an hour, Steve.
Yep, trust. Turn hope to trust, and know that they're all finished. And they know it, and they want it to be over now, Vince, as much as we do. You can tell by the change in narrative when you're on the ground and you're speaking to these people. They know that we know. It's been delivered in Parliament. It's been delivered in the courts. The police know. I even had a comment from one of the police officers saying that they're following people on social media, and they actually liked one of our guys, a friend of ours. So it's now the moment where we all need to come together, and we have to do that in the right way, and everyone will know who's who. So
let's come together peacefully, mate. We don't want none of this. I know they're trying to get us to civil unrest, but we don't conduct ourselves like mugs. We are professional.
Vince, isn't it? Divide and conquer, the race card, all of it. It's all, and social media is as bad as mainstream media now. It all just needs to go down, and everyone needs to hear the truth.
The things that I'm reading at the moment, mate, it's a
distraction.
They're so desperate, mate. They're desperate, mate. The shit I'm reading now, I'm just like.
Do you know the thing is, Vince, when you look at the bigger picture, you've got to remember, right? When I say we're in full control, you've got to remember that the narrative is now being spun by the good side, and if you can conceptualize that, they're trying to make sure that we're ready. So stop sharing the lies and the fear. Stand in your truth and your knowing that it's finished, it's done. Stop sharing the bullshit, because it doesn't exist. They want to make sure that we're ready, and because we're on the ground and we can see that everything's ready, stand in that, tell them, share the truth. Why share a lie or fear? Because we have nothing to fear. Nothing at all.
I think
we know they're finished.
I think,
we're being monitored. And we've been monitored from the outset. And you have to get to that collective consciousness where you're ready to carry through. You imagine how big this is, how vast this is. Correct. They wanted 500 million people left on the planet. We had to counter that. And we have to make sure, we have to go through this to make sure that this never happens again. So the monitoring, the sharing of the fear and everything, right at the period when the energy's coming in, everyone's going to be anxious, everyone is in turmoil. Stand in your honor and your truth, and only share the truth, and stand in your strength and your honor, and tell them they're finished and it's done. And trust me, it's done.
Absolutely beautiful, Steve, as always, my friend. That's an hour, mate. So
Okay.
we're not going to
Thanks a
kick you
lot,
off
Vince.
there,
Yeah.
mate.
Thanks, brother.
Yes. Thank you ever so much, Steve. Just on behalf of everyone, mate, we love you. Okay. Everybody was dead excited when I said I had a special guest for the John Wedger. Everyone's like, "Oh, it's our favorite Steve." Okay. So I just thank you, mate. You know, I look up to you. A lot of my courage is contagious, and it comes from the pecking order, mate. And I'm following suit, mate. Just on behalf of all our people, thank you ever so much, my brother. And you spoke wonderfully once again today. I hope we've been able to answer some of the questions for you guys. You know, this isn't an easy scenario. Okay, this has never happened before. But on behalf of me and Steve, we love you all. Steve, we also love you too.
Love you, brother.
Bless.
You know that.
Speak to you all soon.
All right. Take care. All the best.
Good night, God bless, troops.
Bye bye.